Hello, and welcome to the Digital Workspace Works podcast. I'm Ryan Purvis, your host, supported by our producer Heather Bicknell. In this series, you'll hear stories and opinions from experts in the field, stories from the front lines, the problems they face and how they solved them, the areas they focused on from technology, people and processes, to the approaches they took that will help you to get to the grips with the digital workspace inner workings.
Yeah, so I was listening to something the other day, and it made me think, our house here has got Alexas in every room, and we use it for very basic things like, what's the weather tomorrow? Play some music, and I was laughing. My wife was trying to play a song on Sunday, so Alexa played it the first time, and then thereafter it got confused and kept thinking she wanted to play a game. And every time she said the song, it would say, I don't have that game, but how about this game? And it's like, no, you stupid thing. But it was kind of, these things are prodigious, and your voice is another mechanism to do stuff with. And if you think about a lot of, I read a book the other day where the book must have been transcribed as opposed to written, because they used the wrong words and the word sounded like something, but it wasn't the right word. And obviously the editors didn't pick it up. So, with the technology is getting there that you can just almost transcribe things directly to a written document. And then voice biometrics, in the sense of your banking app recognizing you, or security authentication, those sorts of things, are definitely becoming more and more common, probably because the costs of them are going down. And because we've all been sitting on Zoom calls and team calls for the last 2 years, recording them and transcribing them, all the libraries of data, pattern recognition are there. If you look at the Microsoft or Zoom, they could do a lot for you as a service. That's stuff I wanted to chat about generally.
Yeah, I think the authentication via voice is super interesting. It's kind of, as an alternative to like facial recognition, there's it seems like it would be in a way more secure, because you can't just flip a device around or unlock it with someone else's. If someone took your phone from you and unlocked it with your face, it'd be harder to do that with your voice. But at the same time, I'm thinking about you wouldn't want to say your password out loud to open a device in a public space. But I think the use case of you're on a call with a service rep at your bank, and they can just use that voice recognition to know that it's you that they're actually talking to sounds pretty cool.
Sorry, back. I didn't hear the rest of what you said there. I got distracted by something. Do you want to repeat it for me?
Yeah, no worries. Just talking about how voice authentication is interesting, how it could be more secure than facial ID, in terms of someone just can't take your device from you and unlock your face with it, that you'd have to say something. But at the same time, you wouldn't probably want to be saying your passwords loud all the time. But if you were a use case where you're talking to a bank and the bank can just know that it's you because of the voice biometrics, is interesting. It's just interesting to think about how it could and couldn't be applied, because obviously when you say passwords loud, right, that's something we are kind of taught not to do. Don't read out your password.
Yeah, spot on. And in fact, the thing that I was listening to, the technology that they have actually can tell if the voice is synthetic or not. So they will be able to, so if you have someone that's trying to, and I'll go through the example that the guy used, trying to fake your voice using recording, so that the movie scenario where they take Arnold Schwarzenegger's voice and they voice print it to get through the security thing, the technology can pick up on that. So you can't actually fake the voice as easy as you think. And actually, the guy that was telling the story, he was on this podcast I was listening to. He was telling the story about how a 5-year-old managed to hack the Xbox Live child controls to get into the games. And what the kid had figured out was, his dad had put a password on everything, which obviously he couldn't get the password. But there's obviously some sort of admin or engineering override. If you hit the space bar a whole lot of times in a row, it bypasses all the security. And he managed to get through. And his dad only realized that the kid was doing this because he was coming to his games. Obviously, the kid was allowed to play his own games. And he's coming to his games and noticing that his progress was different. Like, he obviously was playing some sort of game, like World of Warcraft, something like that, where he was noticing that he'd lost points or whatever, and he couldn't figure it out. And then somehow came up with his son. His son went, well, actually, Dad, I've been playing your games. I don't really like them, but this is how I got through. And this was Microsoft paid out on this one, and they've actually put the kid's name down as a what do you call them? Not a hacker, someone who finds a vulnerability. I got a specific name for it. Anyway, he's on the website. And so this guy was saying, if you look at password protection in the house on appliances, then your kids can't break through because it's voice biometric, and we can already detect the fake ones. Same for banking, which we talked about. But you think about also like all these IVR systems. You phone in to like we do some of the medical stuff now at the moment. So you phone a call center, and you sit on that call center line for 20 minutes, and then they ask you to put in your birth date, they ask you to put in your membership number, they ask you to put in your whatever phone number, some arbitrary information, and then you still get through to a call center person, and they go, oh yes, okay, now we need to security check you. Can you please fill in all the same information again? Oh, and we're going to send you a PIN code to your phone. All of that stuff can be avoided because you've already got the voice. And I've sat on. I'm trying to think. I think it's Discovery in South Africa. You actually can go through the normal channel where you go through all those security checks, or you can register your voice, which is like a side channel. But they say if you register your voice, your chance of getting responded to is increased because we'll put you to the front of the queue. Basically, that's what they're saying. And it's like, well, that's a great way to incentivize me because I'm going to sit on this call for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes sometimes. And you can tell me that if I just do the voice biometric thing, which takes me maybe 5 minutes to set up, then I'm at the front of the queue, I'll do that. Now you've got your whole membership base, voice profiled. And there's a lot that you can detect out the voice. You can detect stress, you can detect anger, all those sorts of things. So I think it's a very interesting space.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a great trick for driving adoption is you don't have to wait in line as long. I wonder, what would be really useful is kind of the inverse, is if someone's giving you a call and they're not who they say they are, spam calls, all of that you could use voice recognition as part of that. But that's obviously more complicated to figure out. I know Google has they can just tell how the number's coming in or whatnot, that, it's potentially a spam call. And Apple does that too, to an extent, but I think Google has a bit more of a feature around it. But if voice could be part of that, that would be really useful.
Yeah, my brother gave me an app he recommended one called Truecaller. And you install Truecaller and you turn that on, and then every number that calls through, it'll tell you if it's a spam call or not. Now, that's fine in some respects, but sometimes it can get confusing. Like, for example, Vitality phones me. Now, they use the same numbers for their outbound salespeople as for their customer service people. So now it's a legitimate call, but it's marked as spam. Now, going back to what you were saying about, could you tell from the caller if they're fake or not? I think that would be very useful for some of these spam things and these phishing sort of things where, and I listened to a couple of podcasts on scams where people get taken for a ride by these people, these con artists. And it's not so much, I don't think it's an invasion of privacy per se, but if you took every convict who was convicted of something and did a voice biometric of them, and the phone companies were to monitor those people as part of their leaving jail to stop them doing it again, That might be, the practicality of this obviously has its issues, but that might be interesting. Instead of, all of us having to deal with extra training, extra teaching, because a lot of people just don't take on board when they've been scammed until it's too late. If you listen to some of these stories.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't really know where most scam stuff, like who is really doing that. It's always kind of a question, like who sends, you have to be pretty desperate, one would think, but who spends their time doing that. But yeah, I
You'd
think
be
about
amazed,
it more.
eh?
Yeah.
During COVID, obviously we were in South Africa, and I used to get these phone calls. So did Kirsten. Probably every couple of weeks, maybe 5 weeks, 6 weeks, we'd get a phone call from a cell phone number, and it would be a recorded message saying that you have fraudulently not paid your national insurance number or blah 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 blah, and please hold. And then they transfer it to a person. And at first I'd be like, delete, whatever. I'm not dealing with this stuff. But after a while, I started talking to the guys. Like, so how many people fall for this? I mean, seriously, how stupid can they be? You said last week, as you'd be amazed how many people fall for this stuff. I said, are you going to stop? He said, no, I make money out of this. Why would I stop? And all he does is he takes that cell phone number. It's a burner. It breaks the SIM card and gets another one. And they call through soft phones. So it's not even a real, to track the thing. And in fact, if you're looking for a good series of books to read, the guy's name is Greg Hurwitz, and he's written, it's about 7 or 8 books now, the Orphan X series. And it's all about this assassin that was trained from being a kid, and he basically broke out of being an assassin. So the Orphan X was the different letters, and he only does good things for people. So it's like a pay it forward kind of thing. He never, he's got all this slush funds that he stole or reappropriated, and some of the technology that he uses that's available today to not be tracked and to be available at all times and all that kind of stuff is very interesting. And it's a good series too. The books are actually quite good.
Nice. I'll have to check that out. Yeah, thinking about maybe switching from the more of the voice biometrics to virtual assistants. I was just brushing up on this yesterday to see kind of what enterprise solutions are there today. So I watched a webinar on Alexa for Business. It was like the first thing that came up on YouTube. It had under 300 views, and it was published 3 years ago. So I think that tells you something about like the level of demand and interest currently for this type of solution, at least from a general search perspective. But it's still really interesting. I think, a few things that stuck out are a use case where, and I think this would be really useful now as we talk about redesigning the workplace for collaboration, and obviously more hybrid teams needing to use meeting rooms between people who are working remotely and people who are on site, is to use it for a meeting room setup. So walking into the meeting room and, telling the voice assistant to set your meeting room up or start your meeting, which apparently Amazon HQ does this. And imagine just being able to go in and not have to fuddle around with the conference call and all of that. I think that would be a great enhancement to those, meeting room experiences that can often take, 5-10 minutes if you're running into some sort of issue.
Oh, geez, I think that, hooray, you can solve that problem for everyone. I mean, I remember we did it. I think it was at UBS. We actually looked at this. Could you use Alexa in the office? And the reality is, in an open plan office, you can't, because everyone's sitting next to everyone, and it's already noisy with everyone on the phone. And now you want people to talk to their Alexas. How would they fire off and all that kind of stuff? It just doesn't work. What I've been using recently, and not all the time, but it's useful sometimes, is CarPlay with Siri. So if I'm driving somewhere, they put in some very strict laws here now, using your mobile phone in the car, you can actually lose your license. So, I now plug it in and I put it in the deepest, darkest hole in my dashboard, so I can't get to my phone. But with CarPlay, if someone SMSs me, I can reply using voice, and it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And often you're not writing a lot of words. You're saying, yes, that's cool, I'll see you now, or I'll phone you when I get there, that kind of thing. And Siri works pretty well for that. And you can send the message and you haven't broken any laws by doing that. So I think that's quite a useful thing. The other thing that I do use voice for is if my hands are full and I need to record a reminder for something, or so you're creating a task, or you just want to set a timer. That's a quick thing to do, and that just saves you. I mean, it's so stupid, but it saves you like 4 or 5 seconds getting your phone out and opening it up and typing it in. And it's not perfect again either, but it's better than not capturing it. And I think that's where I'm very interested in. And I think going back to your meeting example, if you miss a meeting and having the transcription that comes out, and there are a few products that are doing this now, where they're not only pulling out the meeting minutes of who was in the meeting and what they said, the actual transcriptions, but they're actually pulling out the actions as well. And I think that's hugely useful, because often, I mean, I've sat in, meetings where we talked for an hour. There's a lot of things being talked about to get done. And then everyone at the end goes, okay, cool, we'll see you next week. And no one's taken any notes of who's doing what. And only the really organized person has actually done their stuff by the next meeting. And everyone else is kind of going, oh yeah, we talked about that, but we didn't do it. And it's kind of lost in the ether. And then someone will moan about it in 6 months saying, we talked about it, but no one ever did anything.
Yeah, that's the danger with a lot of meetings. But no, I think those sound like really useful, use cases where, you need to be hands-free. That's a great one for voice assistants. I think they're really good for accessibility as well. I think about the people in my life so I guess for me, my voice assistants are like glorified alarm clocks and timers. And light switches. I connect them to smart bulbs. So I often say that I wish I had a dumb smart speaker in the home. So I didn't feel like it was, as creepy or always listening, but it could just do like a handful of things. It's almost like what I really want is like more of a clap on than a smart speaker. But my grandfather, who has poor eyesight, uses his voice to text, and that's really important for him. My dad just prefers it, so he talks to his Apple Watch and that sends his text that way. So definitely useful for a lot of different people in use cases. But in terms of bringing it into the workplace, one thing I thought was interesting, I just looked at what does Gartner have on this, which, by the way, Gartner is sort of getting into this realm a little bit as well. I was on their app yesterday, and you can now play their research as if it's a podcast, but it's like automated recording. So it's super robotic, but you can still like speed it up, slow it down, take notes while you're doing it. So in a way it's nice, but the voice is so robotic, it's kind of a bad experience. But anyway, they were predicting that by 2023, 25% of employee interactions with apps will happen via voice, up from 5% today. And that research was published in 2021. So that seems like a pretty aggressive timeline for me, but in terms of, building voice into apps, interesting, right?
Well, look, I mean, natural language processing is a burgeoning field. There are a lot of libraries out there. You've got GDP3, you've got another one I can't think of that's as good. So those at a text level are becoming stronger and stronger. The key thing has always been getting the voice that's spoken into text, but not just getting into text, but getting the context right. So, and I'll use one of the use cases we talked about previously when we were trying this was, I'm a user at my desk working on a computer, and I need to log a ticket. So the context, that's the context. So when I log the ticket saying, and depending on the type of user, they might give you a lot of information, a little bit of information. The text they actually give you is almost not important to what you already know about the environment. So if you know who the user is, you know what device they're on, you know what applications are running at the time, you know what they are doing at that time, and they're saying, oh, I have an issue with connectivity to XYZ application. That information is more important than the actual verbiage usually. So your actual needs of understanding what they're saying isn't that important usually. But in the same token, if they're giving you if they're on the road somewhere and you've only got so much data, then what they're saying is very important. So now you've got a user sitting in a hotel room who's connected to the hotel Wi-Fi, can't get their VPN on. So now they're connected to a public connection and they are looking for assistance. You need to know a lot more information that you got, what hotel they're in, all that sort of stuff. Now you could find that information elsewhere. You can enrich it from the travel booking system for the corporate users. If it's a corporate, you could use IP addresses to a point. If they're using a public IP address that's been registered to an address, there's all those sorts of things. But in the end, that's where the text becomes really important. And I think there's an important piece of this, that humans like to talk to humans. They don't like to talk to robots. Mm-hmm. So as much as, and we've looked at many products over the years, sort of, I don't want to say cognitive AIs, but supposedly very intelligent machine learning engines with pretty faces on the front. And I can't think of the name of the product we looked at, but in the end, those things still struggle with thinking like a human, because they don't think like a human. I mean, machine learning it's not thinking. It's using mathematical formulas to rationalize data, looking for predictions of what you're going to do next. So linear regressions and those sorts of things. NLP is trying to understand what you're saying and build up a frame of reference to match that with machine learning to try and predict what you're going to do. So these are not human smart tools, machine smart tools. And that's the problem. If you and I speak, we're from Western culture, so we speak a certain way. We can converse. If you were to bring an Eastern or an African or Arabic or whatever, where the first language isn't English, and the cultures are diverse, the way they speak, the way things are said, will be different. And I mean, as Westerners, we still speak different. So that's where this thing gets very interesting. I think it'll be solved. I don't think that's the problem. I think that the problem is just how long does it take to solve it, and I expect it solved in my lifetime. But a nice broad estimate on it.
Yeah, and I think the user base too. All these kids now growing up with Alexas in the home will be much more comfortable using voice. We'll seek that out as a feature. I think about Lakeside is kind of ahead of its time here, right? Building NLP into the product with Ask SysTrack, which allows you to and that part of it is you can type your query, but you can also use voice to ask your question, like what's the average CPU like across all of my systems or something like that, and the system would bring you to the right place in the product to find that.
Well, that's that context. So when that's being used, the context is known, and then it's pretty easy. And I'm not downplaying the technical complexity of building something like this, but it's when you control the area that you're in, the context. The other things are easy because you're just doing matching and scorings and rules. Right. I mean, in the end, if the word says CPU, then it's probably going to be 10 options from there. If it says average, then it's probably 5 more. If it's for the user, it's probably 2 more, and that's 50-50 chance to get it right. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. That still saves time. And I think that's what people, and I'm making it as a general term, sometimes miss about these things. They're not going to be wow, super fantastic things that are all glitzy and glamour. They are often time savers, which gives you more time to do something else. And we all hate repetitive, brain dead work. So if a voice can help you with that, or some sort of automation can help you with that, then all for it.
No, absolutely. Well, I know we're at time, so I assume you need to wrap up. But
I do.
Yeah. Okay.
One last thing quickly. So I bought my iPad mini, and I've been using it.
What do you think?
You still there?
Yeah.
So I like it. It's a very nice form factor. In fact, it's so good I've lost it. I don't even know where it is. So I'm using my iPad Mac Pro to talk to you, and I've got my iPad mini normally with me to make notes on. I have found it definitely a much better experience to take notes on than having the bigger iPad Pro, which I find quite interesting. But not drawing pictures and stuff like that, but like just taking notes at the meeting. I just like doing that. I am missing facial recognition. I find the fingerprint recognition painful. I've had to almost have all my fingers memorized for the fingerprint recognition, because depending on what angle you got it on and which way is up, you might have a different finger. So that I find irritating. But other than that, it's a beautiful little device. It's such a nice size. I've got a a laptop bag sheath that I put everything into. I'll show you. So this is, I bought this on here we go. Here's my little mini. So all my Mac, so laptop, iPad, and iPad mini all go in the same bag. And if I sit down anywhere, I can pretty much work like I'm working at my desk, because my iPad Pro becomes my second screen. My iPad mini becomes my note-taking device, or I can use it for calls. And then my laptop is my laptop for doing laptopy things. And I'm really chuffed. I didn't go on the big memory one. I went and bought the smallest one, 64 gigs, which basically on my trade-in of my other laptop pretty much covered the cost, excluding the cover. But it's a really nice size. I mean, I was in the car, I was taking notes while we were driving home, with my pencil. So that worked really well. I'm sharing the pencil between the two iPads. That's a little bit wonky, because you're basically going to put the pencil on the side of the iPad to get it to connect, and then you can write with it. But if you can see on the camera, the size, the pencil fits pretty much the length of the mini, which is not a coincidence, but it works really well from that point of view. So the only trick is the button is here, and you sometimes have to just be in the right position to get it. So I'm hoping what they might do is, in an update, is they'll allow you to use facial recognition. I think that's just software. I don't think that's a hardware problem. I think the camera's good enough. But yeah, I've been chuffed with my decision. Worked out well.
Well, great. No, it sounds like you're getting a lot of great use out of it. You have your whole Mac work kit. So super cool.
That's it, eh? It's all, but this is, I was talking to someone about the other day, and he said, yeah, my wife's also an Apple person, blah, blah, blah. You guys are all like fanboys. I said, listen, my life on Apple works. A very simple thing. I don't struggle with anything on my device. And I was playing with a Windows device yesterday. I was trying to set it up. It took me 25 minutes to do something. And I kept saying to myself, why am I wasting this time? Why am I trying to do this? And it's that need to solve the problem thing. That's the only reason I was doing it. But to add value to my life, and yes, it's something I have to do anyway. But it was so frustrating. I was like, I've never had to do this on a Mac. Never had to worry about this crap, ever. So I'm hoping that Windows or Microsoft will fix these things, and maybe Windows 11, H1 was the first step towards it, and H2 will fix it, and then it'll get better. Because I actually do like the Windows 11 interface. Now that I've played with it for a good couple hours, it's not that bad. But you see, it looks like a Mac, so I'm really comfortable. But they do things. There's still things that you kind of go, why did you do it this way? Really, like, why would you do this? I can't give you an example now because I can't remember, but I'll make notes next time I look at it. But as I say, Apple ecosystem, no stress, everything works.
Yeah. Now I seem to run into less IT issues on my Mac as well.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Heather Bicknell is our producer and editor. Thank you, Heather, for your hard work on this episode. Please subscribe to the series and rate us on iTunes or the Google Play Store. Follow us on Twitter @the DWW Podcast. The show notes and transcripts will be available on the website www.digitalworkspace.works. Please also visit our website www.digitalworkspace.works and subscribe to our newsletter. And lastly, if you found this episode useful, please share with your friends or colleagues.